Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today in our third crowd session. I know it's been a little while since we've done one of these, but we kind of wanted to make sure we had everything ready for you and had a bunch of really cool stuff to show off. And based off how many people signed up for today's session, about a third of our total customers, which is awesome. We're really excited to show you guys some cool stuff, and we can't wait to get into it. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You'll see that we have a new page for our crowd sessions. We were supposed to have the video embedded into that page, but we had some last minute technical difficulties. But for now, you should be able to join us through crowdfiber.com/crowd sessions. There'll be a link there to take you to the actual video. And at the bottom of that crowd sessions page that you started on, there's a chat box. Now, this chat box doesn't require any sign up or anything. It'll just ask for your name, and you can hop in there and you can ask us questions throughout the session that we'll be monitoring and answering. So feel free to send us anything and everything. We'll all be looking at it. We'll all be watching it. You can already see that Bailey's in there and a couple other people. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So today's session is going to be hosted by our very own Greg Richardson. He's going to kind of talk about some changes that he's been working on to the system and some really great stuff. We have new map features, new document features that he's going to kind of go over for us today. And then we'll end it with me going over our new approach to documentation and how you can get access to it now. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Greg. Greg, how's it going?
Yep. Hi. Thank you, Chase, and good afternoon, everyone. As Chase said, I'm going to cover actually two topics today, and then I'm going to pass it back to Chase, who's going to cover the third. What I'm going to talk about first is some work that we've been doing on the maps within CrowdFiber and the visualization of geographic data, and that's where I'm going to start. So in the past, in CrowdFiber, you might have noticed that there were maps in various places when you're in the admin system. Sometimes we think it's been difficult to find exactly where you want to go to visualize that data. And so we've done a lot of work to really collapse that into a menu item that you'll see here in admin at the very top called Maps. When you click on Maps, you get a big view of your territory. And over here on the left are several elements that you can visualize. So I'm going to start at the top. A lot of times, what you want to do is to just work at a very high level with your campaign and look at things like my zones. So, for example, where are my in-service zones, and what do those zones look like? I might want to look at my extended zones, and you can see here in my test campaign, I've got a lot of messy goal-oriented zones. And basically this is done by zone type. So if I want to look at my reference zones, or even if I have private zones laid out, I can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my extended zones here, and each of these panels over here on the left kind of work in layers. They work on top of each other. So the second layer really deals with addresses, and we've actually done a lot of work in the product in terms of how we handle addresses. When you set up a zone within CrowdFiber and you define your boundary, many of you know that we go out and fetch a lot of very rich address data, and we pull that down into CrowdFiber. This panel allows you to look at that and to inspect some of that and to analyze it in different ways. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So what you can do here is I'm looking at my address data, and what I'm going to do is I want to see my addresses in the Between the Rivers zone. So I click Between the Rivers and click View Addresses, and you'll see a sort of a cluster icon show up here, and I'm going to click on it. That takes me down to a level where I can actually see the individual addresses within that area. Now, the first thing you'll notice is there's a legend here at the bottom where I can distinguish between residential addresses, commercial addresses, and some that may be categorized as unknown. And that's where the address data is not necessarily clear from the U.S. Postal Service on the type of address. But once you have your addresses visualized that way, you can sort of slice and dice that a little bit further. So, for example, you might want to look at, well, I'd really like to see multi-dwelling properties, both commercial and residential. And if I click that, now I've got a much smaller set of data that I'm looking at, and I can see that there are some, I'll turn on the satellite view here. So I can see that I have some residential multi-dwelling units, and I have some commercial, because this is sort of our commercial corridor in our hometown. And then you can go a little bit further in terms of looking at, well, I just want to look at commercial. And this allows you to really get into and inspect where the addresses are within a given area. You can also click on any of these addresses, and it will give you a summary of the address. So there's the address that I just clicked on, what zone it's in, and I can click on Edit Address if I want to go a little bit further, and that takes me into the CrowdFiber admin, where I can then go and drill down and look at some of the data that we collect and store. Whether it observes daylight savings time, whether it's residential or commercial. You can see the latitude and longitude. Lots of different things. It even includes data that indicates whether or not this is deliverable as an address if you're doing something in direct mail, for example. So that's the address data. And what I'm going to do is, just so that it doesn't get too busy, I'm going to click Clear My Addresses here, and I'm going to move down to the next item in the panel, and that is looking at my orders. So these are sometimes these are called backers in CrowdFiber, but they are essentially the users who come to the site and register. Once they register, they create an order in the system, and I know that many of you work a lot in that order part of the system. So when I'm looking at my orders, what I'd like to do here is I'm looking at Between the Rivers. The first thing I could do is just turn everything on. So let me see what my orders are. And you can see in our test data, we've got a lot of registrations here. I'm going to jump back up, and this is something that'll happen from time to time. It's sort of foggy because I have the zone turned on. I don't really need it. So I'll clear the zone and then go back down to my orders, and I can work with things a little bit further. So if I want to inspect any of those orders, it looks like I have a cluster of them right in this area. Again, I can click on the dot, and this time we get a summary of the order. So who's the email, who's the user's name, phone number, what date they backed the campaign, the address, some information about the aggregate value of the order that they placed. So this comes from their product selection. You can see that I got about a $90 recurring order and an install of $350. And then just like with the other panels here, you're able to cut that down a little bit further. So if I wanted to look at only my, let's say if I have any small business, I can do that. I don't really have a lot of that data in my test environment. If I just want to look at residential, you can click on that. And I can also look at orders that are contracted or not. And not all of you, I imagine, use the contracted feature in CrowdFiber, but what it allows you to do is once you've taken a registration through the system and it's created an order, there's a flag for an order that allows you to, if you click that flag, it means that not only has this customer come in as a lead or maybe a pre-registrant, but you've actually contracted with them in some way. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in a minute when we talk about documents. But if I want to say, yes, just show me my contracted orders, you'll see that right here, I've got one that shows up that's contracted. And if I click on it, I can go and edit that order, just like I did with the address, and scroll down and see some information about it. I've got a payment of $49 that was made. I've got a signature request that's outstanding here. And you can see that the contracted flag is set on this order right here. And that's why it showed up on the map in that way. Okay. So those are the main features that we have on the map right now. We're going to be continuing to expand on this to add support for visualizing your account data. That would be business-to-business sales data. Visualizing things like your speed test results. So when customers, if you're using the speed test feature, visualizing in a heat map way what the speed test results look like across your territory, and other objects and things in CrowdFiber. You'll see this list here on the left continue to evolve and grow. So that's the mapping functionality that we wanted to give you a quick update on. What I'd like to do is shift over and show you some of the enhancements that we've made in document signing.
Before we move on, I just want to remind everybody, I know we had a few people kind of trickle in a little bit late. There is a chat box at the bottom of crowdfiber.com/crowdsessions, and you can, all it will ask for is just a name, and you can use that to answer any questions throughout the session. And Greg, I actually have a question for you. It's something we get asked about a lot on this new map feature, so I'm going to ask it for our customers. Will they be able to change the color of the dots?
Yes, actually, I'm glad you asked that because customers pretty quickly pointed out when we rolled out this new feature that these dot colors are actually kind of close together. So that light green and that light purple and that light blue are a little bit hard to distinguish. We're going to add support for you to click on a little color picker here and change the legend and make it customized. And we think that this is, we get a lot of feedback from customers that the ways they use the map is for internal reporting, possibly management review, presenting information and status to the board. And so we want to make this very configurable and not just have it be the way that CrowdFiber, that our team imagined that you see it. So yes, we'll be able to adjust the colors in the legend.
Awesome. And just one more time, that is crowdfiber.com/crowdsessions. Just feel free to hop in the chat and yell any questions at us. We'll be happy to answer them. And back to you, Greg, on documents.
Sure. So we've been doing a lot of work in this area. We have a separate crowd session on this, and Chase, I think we can provide that as a link in the notes or send that out afterwards so that folks can get to that. We have an entire separate crowd session on how we handle electronic document signing, but we wanted to give you an update because we made some enhancements that are pretty exciting, and customers are doing some really neat things with them. So I'll start here in the documents view. That's really where document signing starts in terms of getting it onboarded, getting it set up and configured so that it'll automate your electronic signatures the way that you need to. You'll notice here in my document screen that I have a whole range of documents that are installed, and that's done simply by clicking New Document and then going through the configuration. What I'm going to do here to highlight the updates that we've done is I'm going to focus on 2 documents that I have set to active. These other ones are in there, but they're currently set to inactive. So the scenario here is that you have customers who are registering in an in-service area. This would be the typical example. And rather than just capture them as a lead or a pre-registration, since they're in an in-service area, you may want to automate the process of them getting an electronic signature link. They click on that link, and it brings them to your in this case, residential agreement, and then steps them through it. The first version of document signing that we had allowed you to essentially upload a PDF that was your agreement. We would attach a signature page. We would append a signature page to the end, and really all it did was allow the user to click on that signature block and scribble their signature and click Save, and it would produce a valid a legally binding document that's stored in CrowdFiber. We've taken that a bit further now. A lot of customers had a need to really customize their agreements. Typically, you'll have an agreement that doesn't just have a signature block at the end. It may also have fields that need to be filled out. So you may ask them for an account number. For example, if they're an existing customer, you might need to collect a billing address, which we don't really collect through CrowdFiber. You might want to collect some additional phone number information, and all of your forms are different. So what we've done here, and I'll go into this, this is my sample document here, this broadband agreement. I'll go in here and highlight the kinds of things that you can do. So down here at the bottom, you can designate that you want to collect signatures for this document, and I'll explain why you might want a document loaded that you're not necessarily collecting signatures for in just a moment. You can say that I want to automatically send this after a customer backs, and that's turned on currently. So that means that when someone registers on the site, I do want to automatically have CrowdFiber send them a document signature request. Then one of the newest features is that you can say to CrowdFiber that if someone signs this document, I want CrowdFiber to automatically mark their order as contracted. And you remember I was showing you on the map earlier how you could filter and look at your contracted business versus your sort of your leads and your registrations. So what we do here is we, once the customer has signed the document, we automatically convert the flag to say that it's contracted. We've also really beefed up the way you can target these documents. So the way I have this one configured, it says if this document is going to be requested for signature, if the user is a residential, meaning that when they search for their address on the homepage, they specified residential. That's the way this is configured. But you could have a separate commercial agreement and onboard that document and say, I just want that to go to commercial. You'll see that you can target by zone. So I really only want to collect signatures in the West Rome zone. Let's say that that's my in-service area, or that's the area I'm in construction. And so I've specified here just the West Rome zone, but I could specify all the others. And then finally, you can configure and target your documents by product. So The common example here would be that I have a residential service agreement for internet, but I may have a different, maybe a one-page form that I use for residential telephone service. I need to handle number porting, and there are different fields on the telephone agreement. So what you can do is you can upload the telephone agreement separate and say I only want that to be requested to the user if they've chosen my phone product. So with my example here, I've targeted both of my internet products. And then finally, here you can customize the body of the email that's going to go to the user. So I have a simple message in here. It says, in order to complete the processing of the order, we need you to sign this agreement. Click on the link below. And at that point, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I haven't really made any changes. And I'm going to show you one other thing, and then I'll show you what this looks like from the user's perspective. You'll notice I also have a landlord agreement here. In the case of a landlord agreement, the common requirement that we found was our customer wants to have their customer sign the residential internet agreement, but they also want to send them as possibly an attachment to the email the landlord agreement with instructions on reaching out to their landlord if you're dealing with a renter. And so what you can do there, the configuration is much simpler. You upload your landlord agreement. You say, I don't want to collect signatures for this document, but I want this document to be attached to a signature request for another document. So what you're doing here is you're really linking together a document that you want to have attached to a document that you want to have signed. And it becomes really powerful and really flexible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump over and actually back my test campaign. And let's say I'll pick an address here, jump onto the page, and I'll quickly complete the required info. I'm going to choose my 100 meg internet product. That was one that was targeted. And I chose an address that was in West Rome. And you remember that this residential agreement was targeted for the West Rome zone. I'll come down to the bottom. I think I have a couple of questions. I'll just answer that. There's a panel that shows up if CrowdFiber knows that they're going to receive a document, and it lets them know they're going to receive an email after and that they'll be required to sign it. You can customize that language as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and complete the registration. Okay. Now at this point, the user lands on the success page, or the thank you page, if you will. I'll jump back over to my email, and you'll notice that I received two emails. One was, thank you for backing the campaign. That's your standard thank you message. But I also got this email, and it says, action required, your signature is needed. When I click on it, you'll notice that's the content of the message that I specified for the document. In order to complete the processing, you'll need to sign. And I also, down at the bottom, got an attachment, which was the landlord agreement. Now, the user clicks on sign. It takes them back to your site, brings up the document signing. And what's different here, and this is really where the power comes in, is you'll notice that the form fields on that agreement now are fillable by the user at the time they're signing. So it steps the user through, and you can specify when we onboard your document whether a field is required or not. So I have billing address required here, and I can't actually continue and complete things until I put something in. So the user can put in 123 Main Street. Up here under account number, that is an optional field. It's not required, but if I try to type in letters, I've set validation to say that this really requires just numbers. So I need to put some numbers in there, and it'll let me continue. I'll just step through the other fields. You sort of get the idea here. I'm asking for some other information, possibly their employer, although it's not required, some additional phone numbers if they want to fill it out, and billing address, which I didn't make required. Now, the other thing about this is that CrowdFiber is passing in the information that we know about, that we collected, into this form for you automatically. So you'll notice the name of my user was actually CrowdFiber admin. This 400 Broad Street is my service address, and that was passed in because we already know it. And the email address of the user. We also collect that, obviously, through the registration, and it's passed in and placed in the appropriate part of the form. At this point, the user clicks, I want to sign. They can scrawl their signature. There are other ways they can actually type it in if they would prefer that, and choose a font. And these are still legally binding. These are all acceptable as legally binding methods. They can upload an image, so they can snap a picture with their cell phone and actually upload that image if they feel more comfortable doing it that way. And at that point, the user clicks insert. They can click continue, and all the fields are validated, and they can say, I agree. And they land back on the page. Now, the final point I want to make about this is that from an admin standpoint, you have a lot of controls now over the management of that. What I'll show you here is that if I go into orders now, this happens to be the order that I just placed, and I go and look at that order. If I scroll down over here on the right, what you'll find is there's the signature, there's the document. Its status is signed because I actually went through the signing. And if I click view, I can pull that document up, and you can scroll through here and see there's the signature that I did with just a font, and then there's the rest of the form with the information that the user filled out. So you get a lot of control over. You can also go in and look at your signatures across the board and say, well, I'd like to actually see all of the ones that I have signed. You can filter on that and go in and view those documents or download them. You can also go in and say, I just want to see the ones that have been viewed but not signed. And if I have a user who has viewed my document, but they actually haven't gone through the signing, what I can do is I can click send reminder, and it should give me a message here that a reminder has been sent. And if I go back to my email, now I see that I have another email action required, and it simply repeats the process. So if you want to, I joke about this, if you want to pester your users, we give you the capability to do that. And up until the point where they've actually executed the agreement that you've sent them the link for. So those are overviews and some updates on the document signing. And at this point, Chase, I'm either going to take questions on that or turn it back over to you.
Well, let me see if we have any questions. Nothing just yet. So I guess I'll take that as my cue to go ahead and show off some of our documentation and some of the changes I've made to that. So I'm going to take back the screen. There we go. Just a reminder, but we got a few more minutes left in this stream while we go over documents and such. Feel free to drop any questions in this cool little box right here. Bailey's also in there too, so he can probably answer questions as well, but we'll answer any that we get by the end for sure. And you can also email me afterwards with any questions about the stream or any questions about any of the features shown off, and we'll also be sending out an archive of it to all of you later. So if you need to show off part of it to somebody, we can. That's definitely possible. So I'm going to talk about some changes to our documentation. A lot of you guys have the PDF form of our documentation. Some of you probably don't even have the documentation. It just never really got to you. So we essentially had a 40-page PDF of the whole CrowdFiber system. And it was kind of a mess to keep up with and kind of deal with, to update a PDF that big and to constantly be sending it out to people. So we've kind of redone all that. I think most of you know that our support is done through Zendesk. So now you can actually go to support.crowdfiber.com, this link right here, and it'll give you this page. Now, a lot of you guys have filed tickets before. So if you filed a ticket before, just press right here, have you emailed us before, get a password, and it will give you a password that you can use. And from there, that will take you to this page. And it's a nice little landing page for all of our documentation. You can actually see we have a couple different categories right here. We could start off with our facts section. These are different questions that we get asked a lot. You'll probably get links to these in your Zendesk support tickets sometimes. If you ask one of these questions, we'll just shoot you this, and it'll give you a great explanation on what's going on and like what sort of things you can do. And then, of course, we have, like I mentioned before, our actual full-blown documentation in here, split into different parts. It's looks like about 30 articles. And there's an article essentially for every single page in the system, every single top level page. So you have your home page settings, the markets page, your products page. Let's hop into the products page, because this one is one where I wrote a particularly large amount of stuff for. So you can see at the top, it starts with an overview of the products page, and it has little numbers that match to each of the buttons to explain what those buttons do. And then from there, there's a whole guide on making a new product and what the discounts do. We also have best practices for product images and kind of explanations on the various features and things that you can do. And every single page is going to be like this. It's going to be chock full of information that will kind of let you teach you the software and kind of help you figure it out. We also have this really useful glossary and common objects listing, which basically just like if there's a word you see a lot in there that you're just like, I really don't know what that word means, then you can check here and there's probably a definition for it. I know we say back end and front end a lot, and not everybody knows what a back end and front end is. So that it'll definitely be very helpful. And one of the other cool things that you guys can do through here that we're just kind of slowly starting to get people on. If you click your user icon in the top right, you can actually click My Activities. And this will show you any open support tickets you have. You see I have 4 solve support tickets that I filed myself. But I can click it, and I can see all the activity. Well, actually, it's going to bring me to the agent view, but it's basically going to show me all the activity on the ticket and what's been going on. You can reply to it from there. I know some of you that kind of have a few more tickets. It gets a little confusing to have to manage that over email. So this is really helpful and will really help you guys kind of understand, kind of keep track of what tickets you have and kind of what you've been what you're waiting on. So that's really helpful. And once again, that link is just support.crowdfiber.com. Make sure to use that little tiny have you email us before link, and that'll kind of get you into it. And yeah, I think that's kind of it on documentation. Greg, do you have anything else?
No, unless we have other questions.
I don't think so. It's a almost questionless session. I think that means we did a good job, though. I think that means we explained everything clearly and concisely.
Yeah, let's go with that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Like I said, we will have another session coming very soon, and I'll send this one out in archive form before the end of business today. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me, chase@crowdfiber.com. I would love to answer any questions you have. We really love the new changes that we've been doing. The maps look great now, and documents are cooler than ever. And really, Meredith said we're doing a great job. So thank you, Meredith. The document system is really awesome, and I'm really excited for you guys to have easier access to the documentation. It's very important and kind of helps with a lot of problems, and I hope that it'll be beneficial to everyone. So with that, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.